Hello, I'm here to discuss a concept I'm coining as word math. I am genuinely geeked about word math in a way I cannot even describe. Well, I hope I'm translating it to you through this transmission. I am so passionate about word math. This is the intro. I have so many thoughts. Okay, essentially, word math begins with translating an alphabet to a numerical system. So what that looks like is each letter of the alphabet gets assigned a numerical value. For instance, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so forth. However, as you continue on with this process and enter into the double digits, you then rely on a practice called digital roots. Digital roots, it's the summing, like the most condensed numerical value in this concept. J is number 10 of the alphabet. We want to condense this value down to a digital root, its most condensed value, which would be 1 plus 0 equals 1. So J would be 1. And then K, 11, you would add up both values within 11, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Eventually Z is 26, you would add up those values, 2 plus 6 equals 8. So you do this through the whole alphabet, A through Z in the English language, or you can do this with whatever language you'd like. But essentially, once all of your letters are assigned their numerical counterpart, that's pretty much it. That's what the whole that's the whole concept, really. The possibilities from here are endless. Once you have your letters with their numerical values, you can then take a word, the word I. Literally, the letter I is number 9. So I is 9. And then let's say the word am, spelled A-M. A, the letter, is the number 1. M, the letter, M is 4. You would add up those numbers. So A-M, A is 1, M is 4, 1 plus 4 is 5. Am, the word, then equals the number 5. And you can do this to an endless degree. There's so many words out there that you can do this with. Like any word, really. But the crazy thing is, the thing that really, you might be saying okay, what's the point? Why am I someone who needs to care about word math? Well, let me tell you. Me personally, I am fascinated by language just in the way it's what we humans rely on for communication. Communicating thoughts, holding conversations with other humans, sharing information. Not only is language spoken, but it's also written. These words that we use as a way of language can also translate to image. Water is a word that we can use, but it's also something we see. It's something we can take a picture of and have a visual, but it's also something tangible too that we can touch. Whatever. I think language is much more powerful than we give credit to. The other tricky thing with language is, in terms of all languages, there's certain words that don't translate over. English, the language, might have a term for a word that Spanish doesn't, or vice versa. Spanish, the language, might have a word that isn't translatable into English. And this goes all across the board with all languages in all of existence. Is with this level of translatability and how some translate, some doesn't, language also holds room and space for interpretation. And that also is not only within just the words used, but then also how it's communicated. You could say one word a million different ways. The meaning can then be interpreted a million different ways. So there's lots of room for interpretation. Even now in today's world with our increased level of technology, maybe you send something as a text that someone interprets completely differently just based on how you wrote it, versus if you were to say that over the phone, or to have a face-to-face conversation versus just a written conversation is a different experience. And all of this is to say that language and words and this level of translation and communication leaves such a wide range of interpretation, such a wide range of possible meaning, which is a beautiful thing. That's wonderful. It's incredible that one singular word can be interpreted a million different ways, or that we have these words that are untranslatable. But this is where the fun of word math comes in that just from my personal perspective, there's something more robust when it comes to numbers or numerical concepts. For example, math, just as a discipline, is something that these numbers exist in all cultures. A 1 is always a 1. Math is math. Like, it can evolve, yes, and practices and methods can be expanded upon, but there are some guidelines and some modes of operation within math and within numerical concepts that are just, that's what it is, you know? It is what it is. There's no, you can't divide 0. That's just, you know, it's a fact. There's this, it's a bit more substantial, if you will, solidness or this like solidification of numbers that just, it is what it is. There's no getting around it. But also like, see, now this is where it gets interesting. I personally am very interested in intersectionality, just the concept of overlap, that kind of interesting gray space that exists between two ideas, that kind of fertile breeding ground for something new is so exciting. And to combine a numerical concept with a language concept is really intriguing to me. It adds a whole new layer of meaning. Or I also like to argue too that sometimes, you know, if you think of language as a discipline and then math as a discipline, you know, they're so like divided typically. Or, you know, people like to associate language with arts and, you know, this kind of like, oh, this fluidness, this up in the air kind of energy with it, where math and science is more like hardcore. It's more, like I said, it's cut and dry, it's black and white, it's this or that, you know, like it's more logical, whatever. But I don't know, just because things are maybe perceived as opposites or supposedly existing on these opposite ends of the spectrum doesn't mean they're so different from each other. And with that, I'd like to argue that these numerical concepts, math, numbers, equations, all of that is in a way a form of language. It's a sharing of information. It's translating ideas just in a different form than words, perhaps, or letters. And letters too are also, you know, writing and the way we build words, build sentences, the structure of a language itself can be like writing equations too. And it is translating information. It's like creating the equations of a thought, really. Within both of these realms, math concepts, numerical concepts, and language concepts, like they are complex. And they're also simple. I don't know. Two things can be true at once. All of this to say, I think when you combine them into word math, as I'm suggesting here, you can discover some really interesting things and build new connections or interpret things in a new way. That's really fascinating. I don't know, I'm just like, I'm fascinated by it, and I'm finding it's endless the more I dive into this. And so this is really the intro to word math and incredible insights I'd like to share going further. Kind of a place of conversation, a place of exploration, just another big hitter about why I'm so fascinated with word math is I think when you combine, just again, when you combine these and build a bridge between these two ideas, like I said, you can find some very interesting connections. And it almost, when you give these words a numerical value, it almost creates, it's almost like a form of like synonyms, if you will, but it begins to connect certain words in a way you would never expect. Or it creates this link between words maybe you wouldn't have otherwise put together, or words you thought might not have been related, but suddenly now they're kind of intrinsically linked by this numerical value. And this numerical value, it brings this groundedness to the word, taking this piece of language that's so fluid, open to interpretation, and condenses it down into this like one numerical value that can't really be argued with. And then suddenly you have these two words that are now hitting this same numerical value, but were completely unrelated before that. That's just really fascinating to me. And it just kind of gets the brain thinking in a new way, building these connections between words and numbers in a way you may not have before. That's basically my unhinged thoughts on word math. And I'm really curious what anyone else thinks of this. A lot of the humans around me tell me I ponder too much. But my pondering led me to word math, and I'll forever be grateful for that, so there's no complaints on my end. I think the people aren't pondering enough, really. But yeah, that's all for now. And this is really, in my mind's eye, just beginning. Like I said, there's truly no end. There is no end to word math. And there's also no end to intersectionality, or the idea of bridging two seemingly unrelated concepts. The opportunities are endless. The opportunities are effortless. So yeah, that's word math. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have any. If you're intrigued, if you're like, ooh, I hate this, tell me that too. I don't care. This is what lights me up, so if it helps you realize what doesn't light you up, that's also great. Thank you so much for listening to my introductory ramble, and I'm so happy you're here. Have a wonderful time wherever you are, and I'll see you in part 2. Bye! So long!